Hello and welcome to the March 2024 NATS Chat. I'm Kari Ragan, the moderator of NATS Chats, and I'm so happy you are joining us tonight. Well, I want to begin by just saying that the 2023-24 season of NATS Chat is sponsored by Inside View Press. Please check out their book, A Most Rewarding Independent Music Studio by Laura Lee Crosby and Donna Hines Sawyers. It is available for purchase at boxped.com and on Amazon. I always feel like I'm a little info commercial there.
You're doing great.
which is a new thing for us at NATS Chat this season, but we're so pleased that Inside View Press continues to generously sponsor us. So then this is unusual for us NATS chatters, so hang in here with me. There are two deadlines that are really important to our voice community that I want to make sure everyone knows about. First of all, the next NATS National Conference will be in Knoxville this summer, June 28th through July 2nd, and the early bird registration ends on April 1st, which reminds me, I need to get registered because Lynn Maxfield and I are presenting at it, so I will be registering tonight. Secondly is the next International Congress of Voice Teachers, you oftentimes hear it called ICVT, will be in Toronto, Canada in the summer of 2025. So the next summer, not this one. And I'm the program chair of that. We are looking for abstract submissions with a deadline of June 1st of this year. So please, if you have ideas for the ICVT conference, please check out nats.org and type in ICVT in the search bar, and it will take you to the submission deadlines. We're looking for talks, workshops, lecture recitals, and poster presentations. And if you've never attended an ICVT, it is a very special conference. It's every 4 years. Last time it was in Vienna. Previous to that was in Sweden. It's just a great meeting of voice minds. So enough of the housekeeping. I am so excited to introduce Michelle Markwart Deveaux, who is familiar to our NATS chatters, and Sara Campbell tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun chat.
I know.
It is. You two are both just so filled with wisdom and knowledge and information and generous hearts to be here. So let's just jump on into the business of running a voice studio, and let's start talking about You Aren't Your Voice Business. That's what the title of tonight is, and I love that. So take it away, and we'll integrate questions as we go.
That's great. Sara, do your thing.
Sure. Do my thing. All right. So I am so excited to be able to bring this information to you all. Michelle and I have done a lot of thinking and a lot of work around this topic. So what we're going to be looking at is, what does it mean to own a business versus being a business? Because they're two very different things. So how you view the way you live your life and your relationship with your business is what will make this identity shift, going from being your business to actually owning your business. It will make this easier or harder. It is very hard to be enmeshed in your business and in your brand of your voice studio, because when we are enmeshed, deeply enmeshed, and we see ourselves as the business, we have a tendency to take things very personally. We have a tendency to get stuck in inaction because our feelings start dictating our decisions, and we think to ourselves, well, what if I'm wrong? Like, what if this thing that I'm doing isn't right? And we find ourselves in the space of reacting versus responding. And I know that that's a hot topic. You know, we would like to respond instead of react. We also find ourselves in this place of judgment over observation, and we start applying negative meanings to neutral processes, like, for instance, a to-do list, right? Because we start viewing problems as being bad and dangerous. Basically, it's this: when we are enmeshed with our business, we start believing that people know us and care about us as a human, which is true. But then when they misunderstand us, we get hurt and we get offended.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't been there, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
people, our attendees are listening, and you can just think of that one time, right? Where you're like, wow, I really took a business thing very to heart, and it was dysregulating for me and caused me to be really upset. So when we find separation, we understand that our brand and our business they're influenced by us, but they are not us. And this allows us ease and comfort because you begin to understand that sometimes questions are just questions, that everyone in the world is listening to the same radio station, and that's WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? So everyone is just trying to communicate and get what they need from sometimes from a malicious place, but most of the time not. Most of the time they're just trying to get information. When our business is influenced by us, then we start to be able to make data-driven decisions rather than like feelings decisions. And I know, Kari, you'll love that because we start using evidence. We start doing evidence-based business ownership, right? So fear of failure almost becomes irrelevant because the biggest goal isn't to protect ourselves from being wrong anymore, but to make the business work. We also become intentional about practicing things that help us regulate, like the 24-hour rule. We become intentional around practicing comfort and discomfort and noticing those things, which leads to more efficiency and quicker self-regulation in the long run, which leads to quicker decisions, which means that you're more effective more often of the time. We move to a place of observation over judgment. So a person who is in non-judgmental mode will say, oh, there are a lot of things on my list. I need to figure out where I will put these things on my list, on my calendar. And then problems aren't inherently bad, but problems are just things we want to be different. This is happening. I observe this. I would like this to be different. What am I going to do? So when we have this healthy relationship with owning a business that belongs to us, we understand that no one can get a full understanding of who we are by simply interacting with us as our brand. And we don't expect that of them, which makes it a whole lot easier to be in relationship.
A whole heck of a lot easier. And I see that Catherine just popped in the chat. She said, wow, thank you so much for this webinar tonight. I feel so seen.
Oh, we see you. We see you.
So, okay, let's answer the big question here. So we've outlined like, what does it kind of mean to be, deeply enmeshed in your business or in a more healthy relationship? How can you recognize if you are in that healthy, quote unquote, balance? Because we know that's, a hard thing to find. So how can you recognize this? We have 7 different areas that you can look at and kind of do like a self-audit. And this will help you figure out where you are. And remember, it's a spectrum. Everyone here who's listening, you will have some areas where you may be fully separated from your business and you have a really good relationship with it. And you may have some areas where you're all tangled up and there's no judgment. So Michelle, do you wanna go through and let them know what our 7 areas are here?
Yeah, you want me to do it or you want to do it?
Yeah, you do it.
Okay, so our 7 areas are, and if you have, by the way, if you have a piece of paper and a pen handy, write this down, like write these areas down and maybe make some notes around them. So the first one is time, and that's literal time, like in your day. Second is capacity, which is not time. Third is money. 4th is rest. 5th is work ethic. I know I'm going fast. 6th, right fast, everybody. 6th is boundaries. And 7 is self-esteem. And Sarah and I we have this fun thing we want to do. So we're going to go through some examples of what you might say if you are more enmeshed and you feel like you are your business, and what you might say in each of these pillars if you are moving toward and working toward owning your business. Sarah, you want to take it away with the first
Yeah,
few?
so let's start with time because, oh, what a limited resource, right? Okay, if you are the business, you're deeply enmeshed in this business, you might say things like, I love being able to work whenever I want, even at midnight. Or you might say, I don't have the time to train someone else to do this. Or the phrase, I am so busy, might come out of your mouth. And I tell you what, sometimes that phrase comes out of my mouth and I have to pause myself and think, When you own your business, things start to shift. So you may say things like, I decide when it's best for the company when I work. You've got a boundary here. You get to make those decisions about when those work hours are. You might say, let's see when I can create time to hire and onboard a new team member before this situation gets overwhelming. Or instead of saying, I am busy, you can say, my plate, this is my favorite, I love this so much, my plate is as full as I like. Okay.
I love that one too, Sarah.
It's a good one.
One of my favorites. Keep
So
going.
now let's look at capacity, right? So capacity, if you are deeply enmeshed and you are the business, you are thinking things like, I checked off all 35 things off my to-do list today. I am so tired. And I snapped at my best friend, but this is a sign that I am winning because I checked off all those things on my list. Whereas when you're owning the business, you can say to yourself, that to-do list can wait. I need my brains to make big decisions. There's a big shift in how you're spending that capacity. Let's shift into money now, okay? When you are the business, you might say things like, if I raise my rates, everyone will leave. Or it is too expensive to go do XYZ. Or I have no money. It could be the opposite of that. I just hit 6 figures. I am so amazing. Or it could be this one, which is an issue. I don't need to have separate bank accounts. Now, when you're owning the business, the way that you talk about money shifts, right? If the business doesn't bring in X number of clients or X number of gigs, we'll have to reallocate funds for my salary. Or we might say raising rates again, get ready for the dip, because we're not going to take that personally. Or we start viewing money as a renewable resource. And when it comes to that money that's coming in, we can say things like, I am so proud that my business reached its revenue goal this year. It's a big shift. And I got one more, and then I'm going to kick it to Michelle. So let's talk about rest, right? When you are the business, you'll say things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Or even though I'm supposed to be enjoying this movie, I'm worried about the 9 p.m. texts I just got from my clients.
Oh.
Raise your hand.
It's like,
oh, that one hurts, right? Or it could be, if I rest, I'll miss out on something. If I block off my calendar, I may miss out on something. But when you own the business, here's what starts happening. We think, I see that my next week is full of appointments. I better recharge and take it easy this weekend. And we think to ourselves, when opportunities are coming our way and shiny object, nothing that is for me will be missed.
I love that.
And this is my favorite. There are no emergencies in my line of work. Enjoy that movie at 9 p.m.
That's right. To take the thing about rest that personally, if I can wrap in a personal thing here, is this is a really big shift that I've made. You know how people make words of the year or they make themes of the year? And Sarah and I, my whole team knows this. Sarah and I happen to work together. And I really am concentrating on, instead of saying, have I worked enough to deserve rest? I'm saying, have I rested enough to do my most powerful, impactful work? And I'm asking myself that every morning before I start working, every time I sit down, am I rested enough? Because our brains, that's what we're selling. We're selling our brains. We're selling our ability to make decisions. We're selling our ability to communicate well. And so just something to think about to anyone listening is, don't ask, have you worked enough to rest? Ask, have you rested enough to do your most powerful work? And it slides into work ethic. So here's another one of our pillars, right? So when you are a business and you're a brand, you think, I am the one who makes the magic happen. If I don't do it, it won't be done right. I'm the most capable. Or maybe you joke, ha ha ha, I'm totally a workaholic, ha ha ha, right? Or maybe there's a darker need, which is, if I don't work, the business will fail. If I don't do this, the business will fail. When we own a business and brand, our work ethic starts to shift. Who can I ask to help me? Who can I delegate this to? How can we get this thing done? We say things like, my team does not need to have the level of skill to do the good work I am hiring them to do. They don't need to be me. And lastly, and this goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, if I don't rest, the business fails. I must make time for rest. What about boundaries? Everyone loves to talk about boundaries. It's a hot topic nowadays. Social media loves boundaries. So let's talk about, what is an actual boundary, right? When we are the business, we say things like, clients who don't make me happy aren't ideal clients, right? We say things like, oh, someone used a link to buy something and I didn't realize now I have to help them. Something happened and it messed up and I have to do it. I have to fix it right now. Urgency, right? We say things like, making people happy is more important than losing money, right? But when we have solid boundaries and we're working on what we will accept and the behaviors that we will own, we say things like, when a client breaks a policy, the business deals with it by boop, boop, boop. We already made the decision about how we're going to handle things. We say things, accommodating this client will cost me money and emotional space. Refund them, bless and release. Bye. Or it's a hard conversation that I hate, that I don't want to have, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Those are good boundaries. And then lastly, self-esteem, because boundaries and self-esteem, right? They go together. When our self-esteem is tied up in our business, we think things like, if I don't hit my numbers, I'm a failure. We think if business slows down or I'm not making sales, it means I'm no longer relevant. I'm not important. I'm not adding to society. We think things like, I can run on the compliments of my clients for weeks, right? You get that little compliment from your client, and then all of a sudden that's your juice for a week. But when we own a business, our self-esteem starts to become so internal, and our identities just get so grounded into our center. And we say things like, my personal worth is never tied to what happens in my business. We say, thank the universe, business is slow. I finally have an opportunity to finish that thing I've been trying to do for a year, right? And my favorite thing that we say to ourselves when we have centered our self-esteem outside of our business is, I trust myself. I trust myself. Sarah?
It's such a big deal when we can start making these shifts, because when you are the business, you have to do that business. There's this obligation, this need that we should do something, right?
Yeah. And then when we shift it, it becomes our choice. I am choosing to own this business. I'm choosing to run this business. I don't have to do this. I could totally do something else. I have everything inside me to figure this out in another place, in another way, in another time.
There used to be a thing that people would say all the time that I actually hated. It isn't personal, it's business. I hear that in movies, right? It isn't
Mhm.
personal, it's business. And I always, that just never sat well with me. But that's somewhat of what you're saying. It isn't personal, it's business. I mean, I love everything you're saying. And of course, there's value, incredible value in the shift that needs to happen for private studio owners, independent studio owners. There is this part of me though, it's like, it is personal. You know, it is your own business. So I don't know what you, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think to that point, remembering that, like, you know, if you're an employee, you have a job, right? Someone has given you a job. They have decided what that role is going to be. And so they're telling you that this is what you need to do. When you're self-employed, you own a job,
Mhm.
right? When you're a small business owner, you own a system, you own a network, you own systems and SOPs, you own a way that you do something. And then, you know, when you're an investor, you own investments, which is really kind of the best way to go. But, you know, we'll get there eventually. But the goal isn't to be unfeeling. That is never the goal. I think, you know, this is what media does to us, right? Is like you see that, you hear that phrase in a movie, and it is always connected to some sort of negative action.
Mhm.
Always. It is always connected to some sort of offense. It is, I mean, because that's the drama, right? That moves the plot forward. And
Right.
then it's always put in a way like you're hard-hearted if you think it's business. Where I'm like, do you know how many people lose friendships because of a business decision? A business decision that was actually better for everybody else involved, but people took it personally and they turned it into something that it was not.
Mhm.
And so, the other thing is like when our identities are enmeshed with our business, we literally cannot have control over any of these 7 pillars, because now all we're doing is just hustling and hamster wheeling to make ourselves feel good in every 7 of these pillars that we're talking about. And at the end of the day, when you do that, then anytime someone has a negative interaction with any one of those pillars, or anytime a discomfort comes around any one of those pillars, it's going to be deeply dysregulating and potentially traumatizing. And our goal is to like get to a place where we're a healthier version of ourselves, a more confident, a more peaceful version of ourselves. So I definitely agree with you that when we hear it in movies, it is never in a way that is for the good of both people involved.
Right.
Right? And so it can get into us that it's bad. But and I appreciate you saying that, because I know you're not the only person who thinks that. And I'm sure there are people
Mhm.
with us tonight that are kind of like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm feeling. But so maybe we should reiterate what these 7 healthy relationships like look like, so
Mhm.
that it can make a little more solid sense in terms of what you're saying. Like, but it is personal, isn't it personal? So do you want to do that, Sarah?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's important because I think up to this point, it can feel a little foreign the way that we've described some of these things. But I think when we start to look at what we can do in order to bring the healthy relationship in there, it's going to feel a little bit more comfortable. So like with time, let's talk about time. When we do have a better relationship with time in our business, your time becomes your own again, right? Prioritization begins to outweigh balance. So we are not trying to, do this teeter-totter dance between our business and our personal life, because time is the only non-renewable resource that you have. And I just think it's a lovely thing when we can prioritize those things in our personal lives, which we have shoved off for years, thinking that if I don't spend all my time in my business, that my business is going to fail. So with this non-renewable resource that we have, like, we do all of these things. We rest, we play, we learn, we create, we market, we sell, we do our fun administration. That's everybody's favorite job.
Everybody's
Um,
favorite.
and you deliver service, you deliver your services, you deliver your lessons. Having freedom and the way that you spend your time in your business is a huge source of power. And it's a wonderful way to smash the patriarchy, just saying. Because when when we are kept busy, we are kept inert. Take control of your time. Now, when it comes to capacity, okay, when we are starting to really understand how much capacity do I actually have, you're going to start understanding the difference between a $3 decision and a $30,000 decision. So you can stop spending time spinning on the details of these itty bitty tiny things that really, in the grand scheme of things, they don't matter much. So we can stop spinning on those details, and we can actually start focusing on strategies and plans, and practicing the skill of planning becomes more accessible to us. And then that decision fatigue starts to go down when we can step away from spending lots and lots of time on these itty bitty things that come up in our business. Oh gosh, should I text this person back at 9 p.m.? What should I do with this kid who's in musical and needs to miss 3 lessons? When we can start shifting the way we react to those, let's face it, $3, decisions, and spend more time on the bigger stuff in our business, we not only are we better for it, but our clients are better for it too.
Sometimes those $3 decisions feel huge for certain, if you're a younger voice teacher and all of a sudden they're looking at 3 lessons of income this month that they had planned on, it can be really scary. So playing devil's advocate, how would you respond if they get that message and you're talking about, well, let's not worry about the $3 decision, let's talk about strategies. But really those strategies need to be already in place, right? And perhaps the teachers, for sure, teachers need to be reaching out to people like you that are teaching people a different mindset around their own business, right? That has to be in place before that message comes in that suddenly the client's not available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that you could say about how do you react to that? How do you actually, let me shift my language there. How do I respond to this? Right?
Yeah.
What is the decision that I'm going to make in this? And you're right, stepping back. I think when we get on this like hamster wheel of, have kind of putting out these little micro fires that happen in our businesses, one of the things that we start to notice is, oh, maybe I haven't spent enough time figuring out how my business can run in a more sustainable way, not just for me, but also for my clients. And it's so easy to get stuck in that wheel of putting out the fires. I'm mixing some really weird analogies here. We got a hamster wheel with fires.
Hamster fire wheels.
It's all making sense, Sarah.
I love it. Yeah, but our next pillar is money, so you can kind of directly address that too, Sarah, with like that $3, those 3 lessons come in and we're immediately going into a money mindset place, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to eat. Like that being able to disconnect the money and see it as a tool that you use, like your number one priority has to become keeping your business sustainable, because your business is the thing that pays you a salary. It's not people paying you, it's people paying your business. It costs money to run your entire business, overhead, salary, taxes, whatever else. That's a different presentation. Well, you can come back for. And then it invites you to ask that question, because I would say like, okay, yeah, that young teacher's there and they're like, what am I going to do? It's like, that's a great indicator that it's time to get some skill and some knowledge around running the business instead of just having people give you money to do something. Right? Do you want to keep going with the money stuff, Sarah? I kind of took over on your awesome
No, you
chat.
can take it. Do money and rest for us.
Oh, okay. So, well, money is a tool. And also on the flip side of that, we stop equating money with the end all be all measure of success. Because when you do not know where your next paycheck is coming from, that feels much more necessary for you to survive than when you do know where your next paycheck is coming from. And so when you set up this relationship with money and you set up the business in order to make money well in a way that serves you, whether that is, a model like yours, Kari, where you have a high volume of clients, but you can do pay-per service, or you have a low volume of clients and you need to be them on retainer, whatever the business model is, that only becomes one part of our success indicators. Now we're also able to look at like retention of clients. We're able to look at how well communication and conflict is being resolved. We're getting to look at how effective our marketing is. There becomes a system. And then with rest, when we start to differentiate, rest is seen as the means to an end, not the reward. And it becomes, again, a necessary component, right? Have I rested enough? You want to take over with work ethic and boundaries?
Well, that really ties in with have I rested enough, right? We think of work when we're looking at work ethic and trying to find a healthier relationship with our business. We need to start realizing that 20% of the input leads to 80% of the outcome. We have this thing in our brain that tells us we have to be constantly moving and constantly acting and constantly doing, but you don't. We don't need to incessantly tweak everything in our business to change the policies, to change the schedule. So when we start finding this healthier balance, we start noticing that we are no longer equating task completion with being productive. And we're actually able to spend more time enjoying our business rather than tweaking and adjusting. And when we're looking at boundaries, this is a good one. And I think that this is probably one of the things that comes up most frequently in forums in terms of questions that pop up, that people pop into a forum and they're like, hey, I've got this question about this client, right? And it's always about a boundary issue that's been crossed. When we have a better relationship with our business, we are more confident in the way that we are interacting with our customers because we are viewing it as customer service. And we are able to move away from being defensive when somebody has a question about a policy, or when somebody messages you and asks for something that is already outlined in your policy that you don't provide, because it happens to every single one of us, and it's bound to happen. So rather than feeling defensive and like, oh my gosh, this person didn't read, we start getting proactive. Oh, I see you have a question about this. Fantastic. Here, quick copy paste of whatever you have there and on your merry way.
But it's interesting, Sarah, because you talk about customers, but as we know, our relationship with our students is very different than a customer. And now you guys would probably argue differently. So I'll just say this and then you can help shift. But I have personal long-term relationships with my clients, right? Because of the level that I teach. So it does get trickier. I know I'm in a somewhat of a different circumstance, but I think probably every teacher, even if they're working with junior high or children, right? You get to know the family, you get to know that student. So it gets a little gray, this idea of customer and providing a service. There is a bit of gray area. Yes? No?
I'd love to know. Yeah, okay, so I'd love to follow that. Tell me more about the gray area. I want to make sure that I really understand where you're coming from with that statement.
Well,
Can you give
clients
an example, perhaps?
Yeah, clients that have been with me years and years and years, they know my policies, but they still you know, the night before, something might come up. And I'm unusual in that I have a waiting list of people that I'm like, they know that. So they know that oftentimes I can fill that time. But 9 o'clock on Sunday night, I get cranky about it. I get really cranky because they're interrupting the very limited free time that I have. And so, but because the relationship is, these are people I care deeply about, and you know, so that's the gray area. The word customer to me does not represent the relationship.
Ah, I see what you mean. Yeah. So if the word customer feels uncomfortable, then by all means, use a different word. I think the point of looking at the boundaries in terms of providing a customer service interaction is that you're giving them a kindness. Having clear, I kind of want to use the word rules here, rules for yourself and how you choose to respond to the 9 p.m. text, or how you choose to respond because I can speak to like all of the clients that I've had, the majority I've had for 7+ years at this point. And I know that every once in a while they will ask something about, oh, well, what are we going to do with that makeup lesson? And I haven't provided makeup lessons in years.
Right. You're like,
what?
I'm like, what? Huh? Where that? And I just
handle that. How do you handle that?
Yeah. Okay. So great. So actually, literally, this just happened because I had to cancel quite a number of lessons to rest my body after surgery, and so with that, and in the makeup lessons, it was literally a reiteration of, oh, well, no worries there. You know, we already have a bonus lesson built into the spring, so we're just going to use that one, and then we're all easy peasy.
Because of how you strategize
because of how it was set up. Yeah. Yeah.
I think too is the boundaries and the self-esteem and like the customer, this whole idea is a customer is not binarily opposite of a person that you care about. Like just calling someone a customer doesn't mean that you don't have a relationship with them. I mean, especially when you're in a one-on-one service-based business, we have deep relationships, but it's again, to the boundaries of, if we're feeling resentful about anything that is happening in our business, for example, a thing happening outside of business hours, then it's up to us to ask ourselves, like, what makes me uncomfortable about this? What do I not like about this? And what do I need to effectively communicate in order to set my boundary so that I can have what I want, a more enjoyable experience? So I would offer, again, because I know you're not the only person that feels this way. I mean, Kari, Sarah and I work with people who feel this way all the time. That's what we do for a living, is help people who have these feelings of like, why are you texting me in my free time? You know, I'm busy right now, or my plate is as full as I like. And, you know, one thing that we both offer to that is like, you don't have to answer the text. And if a client, student, someone we have that we have a close relationship with is going to be angry because we set a boundary, because we are taking care of ourselves, or think less of us, or think that we're not providing them what they pay for, they can go. Because a person who really cares about you is a person that honors your boundaries. And the only people who will ever be upset with you for setting a boundary is a person who was gaining something by you not having one.
And I mean, I hear you, Michelle, and I love all this. And there's a part of in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, but the guilt. And again, I've run a private studio for 40 years.
I know. And these are hard.
Right. And I'm not going to change. I'm a 60-year-old woman. Like, my business is running. I have no intentions of changing anything, but I want for the younger generation, right? I really want for the younger generation to do it differently than I did it. And especially like just talking about it, my stomach, the guilt, because even if it's a client who knows my boundaries but they still ask and I'm like, really? You've been with me 10 years. Why are you asking me that? It's not fair to do that. And so the resentment, a little bit, and then if I hold my boundary, then the guilt. And I don't know that there's any amount of therapy that's ever going to fix that for me.
Well, and to this end, this is why we get into the, when we do our best to set it up, like you said, 40 years, that's a lot of patterns. That is a lot of decisions. That is a lot of
guilt,
right? But when we start to move to this, like, okay, I'm going to separate this. I am going to put my identity over here and my business over here. And absolutely, they like ebb and flow. And of course they do. But when we allow ourselves to separate that, it also gives us the capacity to work on some of those things that might keep us in a pattern. Or, for example, sorry, I mean, I feel like I'm using you as an example, but if you are out there and you're feeling guilty when you have to draw a boundary, like, that's okay. If, like you said, getting the therapy to help with that, getting coaching to help with that, getting a group of people that can support you in that, because this is, I mean, let's face it, this is very much an issue in the arts, because we are very much in a industry where we are constantly having to view success as what we do to make other people happy. You don't get cast if you haven't made the casting director happy. You don't get into the program if you haven't made the people happy at the auditions. You don't get anything as a performer unless you've made someone else happy in one way or another. And so to shift that, when you start owning a business or treating even your performing business as a business, now you've got to deal with every single piece of data that's ever come to you that has said, if people aren't happy with you, you aren't going to survive. And you're digging into that Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? If this person's mad at me, they're not going to pay me, and then I'm not going to make money, and then I'm not going to have food, and then I'm not going to have a place to eat. And so what we're trying to say is, like, business is business. Making money is making money. Surviving is surviving. Don't put so much pressure on your business to turn you as a survival mechanism. You have the strength, you have the capacity, you have the smarts, you have the talent, you have the skill. You have everything that you need to survive, regardless of this business or not. So treat it like a business. Treat yourself with respect in regards to the business, right? I get really, obviously, Kari, you're just like,
I love that. But and I think for the younger teachers, luckily for me, I sit in a position of privilege where I, mine is not wrapped up into, that. It's the the more of the guilt of, when do you let that exception of whatever that person's emergency is, or whatever that person's life event is, how do you distinguish which ones you're like, okay, I see this one, and right? Because are there ever times that you don't abide by your cancellation policy, for example?
I think it's on the business model. I honestly do think that the business model matters. Like, when you're in a one-on-one business model, owner's discretion can be used very differently than if you have a multi-teacher studio, right? Because if you do it for one person, you got to do it for everybody, and that's just going to cause a lot of shenanigans, and it costs a lot of money because now you're paying your blah, blah, blah. There's lots of reasons. But that's why, a boundary isn't a policy. A policy is how you're going to act in terms of how things are going to get done in the business, right? A terms and conditions, employee handbook, if you will, for yourself, right? Like, how you're going to get it done. The boundary is how you're going to respond when the policy is broken, because of course it will be.
That's a guarantee.
Yeah, right. So if you have determined, well, there are probably going to be some times in my life where an owner's discretion, someone is going to do something that is against the policy, and then it's my responsibility to communicate, hey, the policy says this. As a one-time thing, I want to use owner's discretion and not charge you for the cancel, or not charge, or whatever the solve is, right? I'd like to do that.
That's
Yeah,
great,
but
Michelle. Say that again. I'd like to do a one-time, because I think your framing on that is really important. That
yeah,
you
like a
acknowledge
one-time owner's discretion. Yeah.
owners. Mm-hmm.
And as long as we're communicating that we know that we're allowing the policy to be crossed, that's the issue. Is usually people just say it, like they'll say, oh, it's okay, or oh, that's fine, or whatever, and not actually back up the policy or enforce the boundary. And that's where the problem is. It's not that you did something nice for somebody, it's that you did something nice and then didn't reiterate that this is might not happen again, because the policies are in place for a reason. Because when you have a business model where you have a one-on-one business, especially around a cancellation or something like that, like you said, the 3 lessons, right? The 3 lessons get canceled. It's like, so I don't get to eat because you decided to cancel your lessons? No, ma'am. No, sir. No person. That's not how this works, right? Because I have a business and my business is responsible for paying my salary. And so to that, I mean, to loop it all the way back around, when you said, oh, it's just business, it's just personal. I'm like, you know what? When you don't treat me like a business, it is personal. Because now I don't get to live the life that I'm trying to create, because you have decided that you can do whatever the hell you want with my business because you think I'm a person, instead of running a very streamlined and amazing thing.
That's great, Michelle. I mean, that's it. That needs to be on loop.
Package that. Send it off.
That needs to be on loop.
This is recorded, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes,
I'm totally teasing you. I went off the rails, Sarah. Take us back.
Well,
Take us back on the rails.
Let me handle the question box for a second, because this is
Sure.
pertinent. Aaron Whitfield said, not quite a question, but a tool for handling the guilt. That must be for me. Thank you, Aaron. For handling the guilt for me has been approaching whatever situation from a thank you and gratitude for understanding versus an apology for an appropriate boundary.
Yes. Thank you for being patient. Right? Love that. Who said that?
Aaron. That was Whitfield.
Yes,
Aaron. Tool for handling guilt for me has been approaching whatever situation from a thank you and a gratitude for understanding versus apology. That's really great. Thank you, Aaron.
100%. Thanks for understanding. My favorite phrase. Everyone here, replace I'm sorry with thank you for understanding, a la Aaron.
And then another, Catherine Isaacson says, and also it's powerful for a client to feel comfortable not rescheduling the session and to take that time for themselves to deal with whatever came up and see their progress is not lost the next session. They may even come back stronger. And also that if we say no and don't reschedule, we teach clients how to value our business, what we offer professionally.
That's right. I mean, because it's all tied together. You realize that the reason why we are underfunded is because we are undercharging, because we're not charging professional level service fees sometimes. And I'm not going to turn this into a pricing conversation, but the point is more like, it costs money to run a business. When you figure out how much money it is going to cost to run that business, including what the owner needs to make in that business, you will see that, like, oh, that's a professional level. Like, it's not like we're all slouches out here that just decided to hang up a shingle. You know, many of us have many, many years of training. Not only that, but our own continuing education that we've invested time, capacity, money. Many of us are doing other things. Kari, writing books, teaching seminars, doing classes. Like, we are professionals. And professionals deserve respect. Nobody is worried about how their dental client feels. And I think that it can be a cop-out to say, well, it's different because we're artists. It's like, well, yeah, it is different because we're artists, but that doesn't mean we get to set ourselves on fire to keep other people warm.
Truth.
Girl, you better take it away. Sarah, you better take this away and tell people some examples or tools so we can actually start talking solutions, because I could just go off on the problems all the time.
Okay, so let's look at some real solutions here. What are some actions that you can take? Grab your pen, because this is where I think you're going to want to take notes. So everybody's journey is going to be different depending on where, you've listened to us talk about the relationships between like owning versus being and all of this. So I want you to take notes on what will make sense to you. And when it comes to time, how do we get to that healthy relationship with our time and our business? We do things like zero-based scheduling. We do quarterly and annual planning. You get disciplined around your time, and you know when to stop the scroll on social media. You start embracing things like done is better than perfect. And you're not going to spend an inordinate amount of time creating resources. You start thinking about, how can I automate this? How can I make this more streamlined? When it comes to capacity, again, it's all about the automation. Thinking about, when am I going to check in with myself on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and ask myself, what is the capacity that I have today? And how am I then going to schedule things appropriately? Not putting these high-powered days back to back to back, so that at the end of the week, you're totally burnt out and just basically able to sleep on the weekend, right? You give yourself, this sounds so weird, but I swear it's like my favorite thing. You give yourself stare at the wall time, dedicated thinking time on your calendar, when you stop and give yourself space, right? Stopping when you hit the wall and instead of trying to power through, you start saying no to more stuff, right? It's like the Warren Buffett quote, the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. And I know that in the arts, that is hard. That is really hard.
There's a great line in the movie, the Eat, Pray, Love, 𝘱𝘳𝘕 𝘊𝑎𝑛𝑦𝑒, and the sweetness of doing nothing. And there's this hilarious scene where they're in the barber shop and they're like, you Americans, you work all week so that you can spend the weekend in your pajamas on the couch doing nothing, watching movies because you're so exhausted. And they're just mystified by that. You walk by a sign and see Budweiser and you say, yes, I deserve a break today. But we Italians say, of course I deserve a break. Right? So, it's a great scene. 𝘱𝘳𝘕 𝘊𝑎𝑛𝑦𝑒. Anyway, I've thought about that as you've been talking today.
Yeah, that's a perfect illustration of exactly what we're talking about with our time and capacity. And when it comes to money, multiple bank accounts, y'all. We'll say it time and time again. I know Michelle will scream that from the rooftops forever. Multiple bank accounts, right? Fiscal separation of your personal expenses and your business expenses, and paying yourself an actual salary. Doing the big hard things like hiring an accountant or a bookkeeper, and doing the necessary things, saving for taxes, retirement, health insurance, and aging your money, saving, budgeting, etc. There's so many small, and I know that when I list all of those things, and if you don't have those things in place, you can start to feel like a deep panic inside, because that feels like a lot. But remember, these, taking us out of this enmeshed relationship with our business is a process. It is not something that happens overnight, and there's no shame in the process.
Yeah, and the money part's going to take a long time, because you're also dealing with your money, like your relationship with money and the narratives and the scripts that you have around money in and of itself. But taking care of your money is an act of self-loyalty and an act of self-love. When we care, because it is the number one tool that we can use in our lives to make our lives easier. And it's real easy for people to say, well, money doesn't buy happiness. And I'm like, yeah, well, when you have plenty of money, you're right, it doesn't. But when you have enough money to pay your bills and you have enough money to eat and you have enough money to meet your basic needs, it does provide happiness. It absolutely does. And Jennifer, I responded to Jennifer's question in here into the question box. But she was saying, in the case of a teacher who's really struggling financially, how do you separate yourself from the money? And Jennifer, I had typed an answer to her already, but like, this is what we're talking about, is you slowly but surely learn to take your money seriously instead of avoiding it. Because when you learn about your relationship with money and you start to learn and you start to treat it like the tool that it is instead of some indicator of your own value or worth, then you can use the tool to work for you and let it flow and let it move. But that, again, if you have money trauma, if you have money injury, if all of your money, if you've been a performer and all of your money is based on how people feel about you and tell you how good you are or how bad you are, how you've been mistreated by directors, by so many people, then that's a way you can actually move toward healing too, is saying, but I am in control of my money. This casting director or this director who is saying shit about my body, or saying stuff about my body, or saying stuff about my voice, or saying, what I can and cannot do, is not in control of my money. I am in control of my money. And so I take care of my business in order to make it happen. You should do rest now so that I stop.
Okay. So steps that we can take for rest, right? Prioritizing time for things like socialization, naps. We love
The
naps.
Italian thing. Yeah.
Taking care of your body and your mind, having things outside of work to actually look forward to, like vacations and trips and hobbies. And if you're a parent or a caregiver, so important, intentional time away from those duties, scheduling that time first. And this takes us to work ethic. What do we do with our work ethic? This is where we start determining, what do I need to prioritize? It's about delegating tasks and projects. It's about having, oh my gosh, I don't even have this, but I feel like I should, 2 separate phones, right? Having so we don't have to worry about that 9 p.m. text, because we can take that business phone and shove it in a drawer.
Yeah.
So that we don't see. Or what is it, the Google Voice number, which I hear a lot of people have great success with. It's having a dedicated workspace where when you're done at the end of the day, you can turn the lights off, even if it's just a part of your living room. You can shut down the computer, having that routine so that you can close your business day, and having work hours. And for some of us who are, have been working for a long time, it's about developing an exit strategy. Yeah. Okay. Boundaries. Let's talk boundaries, because we love our boundaries. This is where we start establishing better systems and better procedures, where we make templates for ourselves so that we don't have to rack our brains every time somebody comes to us with a question or an email, and we don't have to spend hours writing things. Having very clear policies and terms and conditions. Knowing the people that you actually want to work with, like truly knowing who those people are, and knowing what hat you're wearing when you're talking to them. If you're wearing your business hat, or if you're wearing your carrying voice teacher hat, because they're different. It gives us this permission to know when we're working and we're not working. And then finally, self-esteem. I think this ties into what somebody put in the questions here. Speaking affirmations to yourself, taking time to celebrate your wins, because so many of us do not take time to celebrate. We just push through, right? And goodness, Lord, therapy and coaching, therapy and coaching for all.
Yes, seriously.
And being in those like-minded communities that are supportive, because it's lonely out here. It can be really lonely as an independent voice teacher, or even if you are in, academia. It's still, there are not many of you in that department. Finding those communities that are supportive and get your own Jedi council. And there's a note here in our things that says pre-Anakin, and I feel like Michelle understands that better than I do. But you know, we like to put like nerdy references in our notes, which I love.
I do put nerdy references in our notes. Well, it's because Anakin yeah, he just killed everybody. So you want the Jedi Council before that. Another way to build self-esteem, and then I want to answer a question that Catherine has that I think you'll enjoy answering as well, Sarah, is risk taking. So you can practice micro risks. You know that Roosevelt quote, "Do one thing every day that scares you." Right? Oh, the female Roosevelt, not the male Roosevelt. So our dear Eleanor. So you can build self-esteem by taking small risks. And there's studies about that. You can Google that and, you know, use your academic Googles to find that. Catherine is asking, which I think is a great around boundary, all of this is, I have a question. Can you speak a bit to the value of sweat equity and what should be the boundary around that concept? This is an amazing question. So learning to quantify what your sweat equity is and the value that it actually provides to the company, the business, will help you draw the boundary. So for example, if you know that it would be kind of like if you took a leveraged loan out for your business, right? So let's say you decided, okay, I'm going to use really sweat equity, Juanita. Sweat equity is the work that you do that is unpaid in order to build or make something happen. So for example, when I was Sarah and I started working together in 𝘕𝘈𝘛𝘚 𝘊𝘩, I would spend lots of time giving free consultation calls, right? Just like letting people know what I did. Sometimes it's called a loss leader. It's any work that you are doing that you are not paid for in order to grow a business. Have you ever heard, like, people listening, you know, like when I say startup, right? Silicon Valley startup, what do you think of? You think of like the cot in the office and people sleeping overnight, or you think of you know, the endless hours of getting the business off the ground. That would be considered sweat equity. So it's work rather than money. Equity is anything that you are putting into your business. So usually it's a financial term. Capital is another word that would be used. So, Catherine, if you can valuate your sweat, then you will have an easier time around drawing the boundaries. So for example, again, back to the loan. Let's say you decided to loan your business $10,000 worth of you. You could say, how much is $10,000 worth of me, right? So you would get out your pricing. Hopefully you'd have that figured out first, by the way, based on how much you need to make and how much it costs to run the business. You'd say, okay, $10,000, and I'm going to use crazy numbers here just because math in public, okay? So $10,000 of me is, I am charging $1,000 an hour, so that's 10 hours of sweat equity that I'm going to put in the business. Am I going to use those 10 hours in a way that is creating something that will make me $30,000? And if I am, then it is worth it. Am I going to do it scrolling on the internet? Not a good return of investment of your sweat equity, right? Am I going to do it? Oh, this is a big one. Oh, Sarah, you're going to love me when I say this. Creating a downloadable course or an online course or passive income when no one has asked you for it and you have no audience is a foolish way to spend your sweat equity.
Yep.
Because you will not get the return on investment. However, if you spend that $10,000 of sweat equity on building your audience and getting that audience, then you have some proof of concept for your course that you're going to do or for your passive income. And then you can invest 5 more hours in the creation of this one-off workshop or whatever this piece of passive income is. And now you're making money off of that return on investment. So again, you kind of marry data with love, data with your smarts, data with feelings, and you make decisions about how you're going to use your time and capacity. You're saying one more thing. Yes, great. Then I'll stop.
Wonderful. Well, ladies, I want to, as we're, at the top of the hour, I want to make sure as, thank you. I mean, just a wealth of information. And I think one of the most incredible things that has started in our profession the last decade, and Michelle is a leader of this and many others, is helping independent teachers in particular not feel alone and providing a place for support, but also guidance about the things that most of us were not trained to do, the running a business, the identity piece that you're talking about. I mean, on and on, the incredible things you've spoken about. So if people feel like they need further counseling for this work, how can they find both of you?
Go for it, Sarah.
Well,
I'll type in the chat while you
awesome.
talk.
Well, you can find us both together inside the 𝘕𝘂𝘃 Cooperative. And if you go to the 𝘕𝘂𝘃cooperative.com, reach out to us there. And I also do a lot of stuff online solo. So if you go to 𝘬𝘕musicstudio.com, you can find me there as well.
And talk about your Wednesday thing that you do every week.
Oh,
Sarah.
yeah. If you enjoy, getting kind of bite-sized, well, they're not quite bite-sized. They're 20 to 30 minute, broadcasts. I do weekly broadcasts on a variety of business, mindset, and marketing topics. So, come stop on in and join me there. It's always a fun time. I love to learn out loud with people.
We're both on the socials. I've got a very robust blog on 𝘕𝘂𝘃 Cooperative. We're both on Instagram as the 𝘕𝘂𝘃 Cooperative and Savvy Music Studio. And then of course we have our Facebook pages and all of that. But please, don't hesitate, reach out, because I know it's cheesy to say this, but people are like, I can't afford it. And I'm like, can you afford not to?
That's right.
Seriously, can you afford not to anymore? Do you still want to keep doing it? So we both have a passion. Sarah's excellent coach. She's excellent at all of this. And I highly recommend any one-on-one services with her. And then, of course, you can get to our programs in the 𝘕𝘂𝘃 Cooperative. We also do one-on-one work, Sarah, and all of that. But we are here to raise the economic vibration of the arts. That is really ultimately, Sarah and I have a shared core value of impact. And that's why we work well together. And we know that you're not going to do all these things overnight, and so I guess our last thought would be, when you are your business, you think you've got to do this overnight. You're going to hear everything that we did, everything we talked about. When you are your business, I got to fix it all. I got to fix it all. I got to fix it all. But when you own a business, you recognize oh, this is going to take a while, because businesses take a while. And I'm going to get some resources around it. I look forward to prioritizing the different areas as my capacity and the business's capacity sees fit. So thanks so much, Kari. And thanks, Sarah. I always love doing things with you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Really so valuable. And I know we just scratched the surface of the depth of information, but amazing all the information you shared tonight. So thank you. And let me just remind NATS chatters, the next NATS chat will be April 14th. And we're going to take a bit of a turn. I will have Abby Halpin, Walt Fritz, and Gina Thurston on. And the topic will be physical therapy interventions and the performing voice, more than getting stronger. So
Abby's awesome.
Yeah, Abby's, well, of course, yeah. She was my physical therapist and many years ago, and pulled her into our field. And
I'm so glad.
And Walt Fritz, of course, is doing such incredible work, teaching manual therapy to speech-language pathologists and others. So it's going to be I think that pulling in those multidisciplinary fields is so critical. And so having these three physical therapists who specialize in the performing artists will be a really fun conversation. So April 14th, I hope you'll join us. But for tonight, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for everyone who attended, and be well. We'll see you in April.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.